Nietzsche had such a profound impact on humanity, but remains something of an enigma. He was a brilliant mind, so gifted in fact that he got a professorship at the University of Basel before even graduating. But his life was far from easy. He had unbearable headaches that might have turned his genius into madness. Now, Nietzsche's philosophy wasn't like the grand systematic thinking of the German idealists that dominated the 19th century. His approach was something else. Emotionally charged, symbolic, and at times quite biting. Think of Hegel, for example. He says, the knowledge of mind is the highest and hardest just because it is the most concrete of sciences. That's dense, abstract. But then Nietzsche comes along and says, culture is only a thin apple peel over a glowing chaos. So really, his thought is best understood as a philosophical parable. It opens endless possibilities for interpretation. But however you interpret his ideas, the key takeaway is his decisive turn towards the human experience, much like Socrates did in antiquity. Instead of focusing on abstract metaphysical problems, Nietzsche placed the human condition at the heart of philosophical inquiry. So, what exactly is Nietzsche's philosophy, and who killed God? When we think of ancient Greece, we often see images of majesty, glory, and power. That's because many modern philosophers see themselves as the intellectual heirs of the ancient Greeks. But Nietzsche wasn't so sure about that. He thought that behind this facade is a world of evil and chaos. So check this out. In The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche makes a scandalous claim. He suggests that ancient Greek culture, and by extension the human condition, was shaped by the tension between two fundamental forces, the Apollonian and the Dionysian. The Apollonian force, named after Apollo, the god of oracles, healing and knowledge, represents reason, structure, and order. It's a force that seeks calm and control. Then, on the other hand, we have the Dionysian, the irrational, wild, and untamed aspect of our psyche. Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility, and ecstasy, represents intoxication, emotional abandon, and the primal forces of life itself. These two forces, the Apollonian and the Dionysian, are in constant tension, and Nietzsche believed that maintaining a balance between them was essential for a healthy culture. But here's the catch. Starting with Socrates, Western culture began to turn Apollonian. In other words, reason and structure became more important than the emotional and spiritual elements of human life. And then, of course, Christianity came along and basically confirmed this bias. It introduced strict moral codes and obedience to a singular, all-powerful God. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche famously declared that God is dead, and our reality has lost its ruling force. The modern times are science-based and emphasize that all processes in this world are structured by the laws of physics and not by providence. Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau demonstrated that power is not the result of divine will, but of social contract. And here's the thing. Nietzsche believed that in our pursuit of controlling reality through technology and industrialization, we had killed God. He saw the death of God as the end of determinism, the idea that everything has a predetermined reason. He believed there was no grand plan, no universal design, and that humans now had the freedom to create their own meaning. Of course, this led to the collapse of many traditional beliefs, particularly Christian ideas, but Nietzsche also saw this as an opportunity. With the old structures gone, humans now had the chance to explore new possibilities for freedom. Next, in The Antichrist, Nietzsche explores how Christianity is a way for the weak to cope with life's hardships, a kind of slave morality. Christianity, he argues, teaches humility, self-denial, and submission to authority. And these virtues, while seemingly noble, come from a place of weakness. In other words, when people feel powerless, they adopt moral systems that give them a sense of superiority over their oppressors. But think about this. By killing God, Nietzsche wasn't just rejecting one religion. He was overturning an entire moral framework that had governed human life for centuries. Now, in contrast to slave morality, which focuses on humility, meekness, and obedience, Nietzsche proposed a master morality, one that celebrates strength, power, nobility, courage, and independence. Master morality, he argued, is about creating your own values and pursuing your goals with absolute freedom. The master controls their own life. The slave, on the other hand, simply follows the rules, never questioning the status quo. Master morality is active and transformative, embracing power to shape one's destiny. Slave morality, on the other hand, is passive, constantly justifying why things are the way they are without challenging the norm. Nietzsche saw this as a herd mentality, one that stifled creativity and individuality. One is the morality of the strong, while the other is the morality of the weak. Now, Nietzsche said that Christianity had turned everything on its head. Weakness is now considered a virtue, while power and strength is dangerous and evil. This led to a kind of resentment among the weak, who began to see the strong as their enemies, people they could blame for their misfortunes. But let's pause for a second. Why are some people strong and others weak? Nietzsche believed that from birth, every person has an inherent will to be powerful, but this will manifests itself in different degrees. Here we can see the influence of Arthur Schopenhauer, who spoke of the will as the fundamental force behind all things. But Nietzsche's will to power isn't about domination, it's about striving to be your best self, to grow spiritually and to master your own life. So finally, in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he introduces the concept of the Ubermensch, often translated as Superman or Overman, but Nietzsche didn't mean this literally. The Ubermensch is a metaphor for a new kind of human being, someone who has transcended traditional morality and achieved a higher level of independence and self-mastery. Nietzsche saw humanity at a crossroads, caught between the nihilism, the belief that life has no meaning, and the potential to rise above it. And the Ubermensch was his answer to this dilemma, a spiritual ideal, one that allows humans to create new meanings and goals in their lives. This ideal is characterized by a kind of creative individualism, someone who lives by their own values, free from the constraints of traditional morality. Nietzsche compares human beings to a rope stretched between the beast and the Ubermensch, with the latter representing the highest form of human evolution. But here's the thing. To become the Ubermensch, Nietzsche says individuals must go through 3 stages: the camel, the lion, and the child. First, the individual accepts the constraints of life, following society's rules and accumulating knowledge. The camel is willing to bear this weight, developing a sense of duty and responsibility. But the individual then rebels, like a lion, against societal conventions and morality. They begin to question everything they've been taught, asserting their will to power and creating their own values. So finally, the individual transcends both societal constraints and their own ego, achieving a state of innocence and pure power. In this stage, the individual is free to create their own meaning, living without being bound by societal norms. Look, I think it's obvious Nietzsche's philosophy is controversial, to say the least, especially for his rejection of inherent equality, which he saw as limiting individual potential. Nowadays, equality is considered a fundamental right, so this opinion might seem problematic. But if you look closer, Nietzsche's philosophy is actually about personal freedom, about each individual having the power to shape their own life, free from societal expectations. And the real question is, wouldn't you like that?